product provided by Nintendo. Okay, yeah, we have to talk about it. The Switch 2 edition for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, that's a mouthful, has spawned quite a bit of controversy. Does it actually make the game look better? Is it worth it? And a whole host of other criticisms. Well, as a massive fan of the game, I think the answer is just a little bit complicated. In today's video, we're gonna dig into why. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and our beautiful lies in 60 FPS.
But it's our new home.
Let me tell you a story. I actually recorded this video yesterday, but I had to scrap the recording because I made a bit of a discovery. So the way that I record my footage for Xenoblade X is using an Elgato capture card. I promise this is gonna go somewhere for Xenoblade X. The capture card essentially acts like a middleman. It takes the footage from the Switch 2, brings it through the capture card, and delivers it to my PC so that I can record it. Now, in the software for Elgato, I have it set to record in 4K 60 FPS. The Switch 2 edition of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is supposed to be 4K 60 FPS. So with the software telling me it's 4K, with the Switch 2 itself telling me it's displaying in 4K, I just assumed that it was 4K. And one of the things I talked about in that video that I've now had to scrap was that while to me it did look a little bit sharper and it did look better across the board, not entirely, but generally speaking it looked more clear to me, it didn't look like a native 4K. Turns out it wasn't a native 4K. The problem I was running into was that 4K 60 FPS recording wasn't supported on my capture card. So while the software, for some idiotic reason, said it was recording in 4K 60 FPS, it was probably more like 1440p, maybe even 1080. I think 1440p. Now, I'm a recent new adopter of 4K because I recently upgraded my monitor. So up to a few months ago, most of my gaming was done in 1440p. The only reason I managed to spot this was because on a whim, I decided to swap my monitor from DisplayPort for my PC to HDMI for my Switch 2, and I noticed it looked a little bit sharper, but it wasn't abundantly obvious. I had to spend, I'm not joking here, like an hour with my head like this close to the monitor looking for any kind of difference. I eventually managed to find one, and it was the hair. The hair looked noticeably better with the signal from the Switch 2, or the pass-through signal from the Switch 2, compared to the recording resolution I was seeing on my PC. Why am I talking about this? Because to me, it wasn't abundantly obvious that there was a massive difference between the 4K version and the 1440p. I'm not operating with a small monitor either. The thing's like 32 inches and it's like one arm span away from me. Okay, more like an arm span and like half a hand, but still, it wasn't that big of a difference. Why does that matter? I think it's fair to say there's been quite a bit of controversy surrounding the Switch 2 edition of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, and I think it's for a pretty decent reason. Now, I'm not gonna act like it's the worst thing ever because I don't think it is, but I do think that when you're asking people to pay money for what is simply a performance increase with 60 FPS, we'll get to that, and also a resolution bump, which is the 4K bit, I think it's fair to say that people should be able to expect a little bit better. Now, I am primarily a PC player. PC is my primary platform, it's my preferred platform. The concept of having to pay a game even more money so that it can utilize my current hardware is kind of ludicrous to me. I can kind of understand it for a console, even if I disagree with it for the most part, because, and I'm not saying this is how it actually works, I just can imagine this is how it works, that when you're developing a game for a specific piece of kit, like only for a Switch or only for a Wii U, you're probably designing that game and optimizing it for that specific piece of hardware. And I imagine when you want to get it to run even better and optimize it on another piece of hardware like the Switch 2, there would have to be some level of effort that would go into that process. Maybe it's not too much, but I imagine there would be some level of effort. And when a level of effort has to go in, I can understand charging for that. It's one of the reasons I will always say PC is a better platform, but we don't need to get into a PC elitist tangent right now, though I'm always happy to do so. As a consumer, when you're asking people to pay money for two things, better frame rate and better resolution, I think it's fair for people to expect those things to be very noticeable. I think the frame rate for the Switch 2 edition of Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is very noticeable. It makes playing the game better to me. It makes controlling the game better to me. I feel like the menus are a little bit more snappy, which I personally very much appreciate. Same thing with like the save and all that. It feels better to play. I am satisfied with the Switch 2 edition in that regard. When it comes to the resolution, yes, I do think quite a few things look sharper, particularly the character models. Like I'm looking at my weapon, I'm looking at my armor, I'm looking at my hair. From what I recall of the Switch 1 edition, this does look better. Now, that could also be partly because of my monitor. I'm going from a non-OLED to a QD OLED, but it's also just things look sharper across the board. So my issue isn't necessarily does it look better or worse compared to the Switch 1 edition, because to me and to my eye, I would say, yes, it does look better, despite the fact there's some visual hiccups. We'll get to that. But for me, it isn't an extremely noticeable 4K. And if you had just told me it's 1440p, I would have believed you. Now, I'm not expecting it to go from looking like a Wii U game, despite how like leaps and bounds above the competition, in my opinion, Xenoblade X was for the Wii U and that hardware. I'm not expecting it to go from like that to something like Black Myth Wukong or something, right? I'm not expecting that. I do think it's safe to say, though, that there's quite a few things in this game that don't look 4K. Quite a few textures, quite a few models. Like, look at this rock, despite how close I am to it, right? It's like when you look at Tatsu, when you look at me, there's a very big difference between the rock and us, and it makes us stand out compared to the rock. So are there some things that look better? Absolutely. Are there quite a few things, important things I'd argue, that don't? Also true. And on top of that, because they're probably almost certainly using something like DLSS to upscale it to 4K, because I kind of doubt it's a native 4K. It could be, but I kind of doubt it. One of the things I noticed immediately upon starting the replay through for Xenoblade X with the Switch 2 edition is that for some distant objects, there's a weird haze effect going on. Some kind of flickering. You can kind of see it in the fog back there. Also up in the clouds. I'm not sure if maybe YouTube compression is like butchering that or not, but on my end, I can see it. It is very noticeable to me. And especially in a game where a lot of its visual splendor is looking out over giant, grandiose environments with changing weather and changing time of days, having that flickering or having that glitching, it is noticeable, and it can make some elements worse or look worse because it's far more noticeable and your eyes being drawn to them compared to how gorgeous the actual environment is. So for me, I think it would behoove Monolith and Nintendo and get them some decent public PR, and also would just probably be the right thing to do if they made a patch to address some of these issues. Because again, I do think the game looks better than what it did on the Switch 1, but it doesn't mean it looks up to stuff to where it should be. For me, the big thing I was looking forward to with the Switch 2 edition, or a theoretical Switch 2 edition, is the same thing I'm looking forward to for the other Xenoblade games, and that is 60 FPS. I am an FPS snob. Games play better with a better FPS. It's not just a matter of looking better, it's a matter of playing better. But I would also like the games to look better as well. And it's like, when you're advertising 4K, if we're going from here, I feel a lot of us were hoping that 4K would bring us to like here. And I think where we're currently at is like around here. It's better, don't get me wrong, but especially for the $5, you kind of hope for a little bit more than that. And I don't think it's wrong or greedy to expect more than what we got.
But it's our new home.
Now, you see, the actual funny part about all of this is that of all the games that needed 4K 60 FPS, I would kind of argue X was the one that needed it the least, or at least it's right up there with Xenoblade 1. For me, Xenoblade X Definitive Edition had probably the sharpest visuals to me of the 4 main Xenoblade games. So, funnily enough, for me, if there's any game I want to see with updated resolution just across the board to make it look sharper, it's Xenoblade 2. Now, I'm a massive fan of Xenoblade 2, don't get me wrong, but I do hope that at some point we get to see 4K 60 FPS versions of Xenoblade 1, particularly 2 and also 3. It's just when we get around to those, I hope they're able to address these like upscaler issues that X is clearly having. It's like I'm even looking at the characters and I have this like weird shimmering effect, like particularly on the faces of all 3 of the characters here. It's very noticeable, it is distracting, and it's something I do think Monolith and Nintendo, or whoever they got to do this, should address. They can almost certainly get away with just ignoring it and not doing anything. I just think it would be better to address it. You asked people to pay a certain amount of money for an upgrade, and that upgrade, in my opinion, is not particularly up to snuff. It's like, you can look at Nail in particular right here, and again, I don't know if it's coming across after like the compression with like YouTube or going through the recording software and all that, but it's like, it's very noticeable to me. It's very distracting. It's almost like, you ever look at a rooftop on a hot like summer day and you see the haze effect, it's almost like that's being applied to like every character here. If we were just talking about like the Switch 1 edition, that would be one thing, but you are advertising 4K. So when you have visual issues like this, it is far more apparent, in my opinion, far more egregious. And while I think across the board, most things look sharper and do look better, it's stuff like that where it's like, I can honestly see where some people are coming from, where they say it looks worse, because it is very distracting. It is very noticeable. This isn't a minor thing or anything. It's like, especially in an RPG, you're gonna be looking at the characters a lot of the time and overall visuals, because you can see this effect on distant objects as well to some degree. It just looks bad. This is something they should address.
But it's our new home.
I don't particularly care if the Switch 2 edition was outsourced or not, because either way, the end result is still the same. It is rather lackluster. I'm alright with it, but I can understand why a lot of people wouldn't be. I hope we see a patch addressing some of these issues at least, and I hope we see that patch sooner rather than later. Maybe they wait for the physical edition to ship, maybe, who knows, if we even get a patch at all, but it'll be very interesting to see what they do for Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3, because I can't imagine you would do a Switch 2 edition only for X. That doesn't make sense to me. I wouldn't be surprised if the reason we have the X Definitive Edition right now for the Switch 2 is just because it was the one that was finished first. That wouldn't surprise me really, but time will tell and we will see. And here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with if you are personally satisfied with the Switch 2 edition, what would you like to see possibly fixed and addressed, and what would you like to see for the Switch 2 editions of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 if we theoretically get them? I want your opinions. I want to hear your perspectives, and leave them in the comments down below. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And there is a lot of gaming news nowadays, people. There's a lot. Phil Spencer is out as Microsoft's gaming CEO. We have a lot to talk about. Want to find out more? Check out this video right here. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.